certain wrestle, right? It's knowing that and then identifying where things are coming from and then assigning them so you don't get played. Yes? You don't go down a slippery slope. You don't make making choices. And this is why it's controlling of tongues, Yes? So this question is understood at what? At a level of where one is thinking things. Yes? Right? But be very careful you don't enunciate. Because once you enunciate, that's mushkila now. Because once you articulate that, you have now made that an action of the tongue. And that's a brevity. That's very serious. That then carries a consequence, for sure, upon one's heart, upon one's state. I mean, this is, it's well known. And these are the things that we know from many hadiths, from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and others, that, the heart becomes, it has that nuqta, that when you do something that is not correct, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts that, that black mark. We've all been told about this, obviously, as kids, You do something you shouldn't do, right? Everyone's like, oh my God, there's that black mark on your heart. So a slave, whenever you do a wrong, there is a black mark. When a slave does a wrong action, there's a black mark that's placed on the nukitat fi qalbihi nuqta. There's a black mark that is made upon the heart whenever you do a sin. Right? فَإِذَا هُوَ نَزَعَ وَاسْتَغْفَرَ وَتَابَ سُقِلَ قَلْبُهُ. So when the person then makes removal of that wrong, stays away from it, makes tawbah, makes istighfar, سُقِلَ قَلْبُهُ. Their heart is then clean, is polished, right? وَإِنْ عَادَ زِيدَ فِيهَا. And if he goes back to it, if one goes, it becomes, that blackness then becomes more intensified. It becomes increased. حَتَّى تَعْلُوَ قَلْبَهُ. Then if that sin's persist, then what does it do? It envelops the heart. That darkness ends up blackening the heart, right? And that is what is referred to, as we know in Surah Mutaffifin. Huwa arran. That's what arran is. Alladhi dhakar Allah. That Allah mentions. Kalla bal rana ala qulubihim. Bima or wama ma kanu yaksibun. Kalla bal rana ala qulubihim. Ma kanu yaksibun. Yes? It's an amazing ayah as well. Because it says iqtisab. Yaksibun. Doesn't say ya'malun. Doesn't say yaf'alun. It says yaksibun. Yeah? And kisba is what you do daily as a way of acquiring a livelihood, a routine that you do daily. Do you understand? So when the Quran is saying that rana, their hearts have become right and they've been rusted over, yes? Effectively rusted over. Huh? It didn't happen in a moment. It was a perpetual persistency, yes, that led to it to then become rusted. Kalla bal rana ala qulubihim. Yes? And the rust is what? Rust is another amazing point. Rust is, what does rust do? Rust occurs over the actual real thing. You understand? It occurs on what's, it covers what's behind it, And it's almost like a parasite. But it can be removed. I'm not talking about WD-40. Right? That's what tawbah is, you see. Tawbah does that. It cleans it. And it lets it come back again. So all the young blood here who love their alloy wheels and God knows what else. And their kits and all that. And then they see the slightest dot of something. It's like, go and get the wax out and buffing and go get the slightest thing. And they're like obsessed. Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? We can find, immediately we can find a sense of like importance with things like that. But it's the heart that needs to be attended to, yeah? So now, khair. Inshallah, let's move to what I was saying is the hadith, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, hadith number 9, yes? I've got this correct. 1 minute. No. Hey, now, here we are. Yes. Okay. Now this is in this hadith we find that the Prophet ﷺ is using similitude, right? And the striking of metaphors. Metaphors are very powerful in conveying concepts and ideas otherwise quite difficult to appreciate, right? This is one of the powers of language, that it allows for figurativeness in an effective way of conveying the point that is wanting to be made. We readily are able to relate to a metaphor or a simile, and it stays with us far more longer, and it lets us reflect upon it. Hence, the line is throughout pretty much most languages, I could say, is used as a metaphor for courage, right? Etc. And you can, by that, you can get the idea, right? The Quran is replete with metaphor. Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah rahimahullah has his fantastic work on the use of simile in the Quran. Amsal is very good. As we with the Prophet ﷺ, and here we look at this hadith from Anas radiallahu anhu, in which he narrates that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is coining this aspect of how believers are, and believers in particular here in relation to Quran, yes, in their relationship with the Quran, with the Book of Allah. And it concludes with what you can say is actually the most important one of the most important influencing aspects that help or deprive one from having a relationship with the Quran. And so it's an amazing hadith. The first part of it, where Sayyidina Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is talking about the believer and the believer's relationship with the Quran and the different conditions of the believer in that. And then it concludes, the last part is quite clearly giving the means that will help one ascend to become towards becoming the highest form of believer that is mentioned first in this similitude and this metaphor. Yes? Okay? So if we read it, hopefully you understand. From Anas, the Prophet ﷺ said, مَثْلُ الْمُؤْمِنَ الَّذِي يَقْرَأُ الْقُرْآنَ مَثْلُ الْأَتْرُجَّةِ. And Atruja is Ahl al-Sham. They refer to it as kabad. I think I'm saying that right. Is it kabad or kabad? It's like a citron. Kabad. Is it with the shadda? Shadda ba. Kabad. No. All right. Yes. It's kabad. Yeah. So Ahl al-Sham call it kabad. Yeah. It's a citron fruit, right? And it looks kind of like a lemon, but it's slightly different. It's more bulkier, and it's very fresh. It's zesty, and its taste is lovely as well, right? So the Prophet ﷺ is speaking about that this, like a citron, its smell is sweet and its taste is good. And from that you can immediately understand what? This is the believer whose outward and inward are in sync. And then the next is the believer who does not read the Quran. Is like a date. It has no smell, but its taste is sweet. Right? So that is slightly inferior. Right? And then Sayyidina Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam speaks about the fajr, which is also someone who has iman. Right? But who reads the Quran is like basil. Its smell is sweet, but its taste is bitter. You see what's happening here? Is that there is a degree of outward decorum, but the inward is not quite right. You follow? And then the last is the evildoer who does not read the Quran. That has no attention. Is like the collinscience. It has no smell, and its taste is bitter, and bereft. Yeah. So from this, what do we get? We get a spectrum. Do you understand? A spectrum of how one can be in their relationship with the Book of Allah as believers, and as a result, it becomes a spectrum of knowing how qualitatively one's iman is and where. Yes? And why this is important is because what we see in such hadith, as in the Quran, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes things in ways of categories and descriptions. And you have those who are at the extreme of something, right? Amongst those would be, say, the munafiqeen, right? And then you have those who are on the other extreme end, which are who? Like the muttaqeen. You understand? And what you find is that those titles of those categories are never without functional descriptions of qualities and characteristics. This is why you can hopefully appreciate is that from day one to now, this emphasis has been made upon virtue and virtuosity, because it's those things that begin to steer you into being branded with Allah to be from a certain category, right? So there's a degree of fluidity here. You understand? So if you're, la samahallah, if you're at the bottom of this, that doesn't mean you can't get to the top. Yes? And if you're at the top, it doesn't mean you can't fall down to the bottom. Yes? That's why this is not to be read as some kind of just, some linear, you understand what I mean? Here's a carrot, here's a, la, 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 la. Neither is the Quran like that, nor is the prophetic words like that. It's saying that you can potentially oscillate through this. You can go from top, you can end up at the bottom, but you can be at the bottom and you can also end up at the top. You understand? But, so it gives hope for someone who may be in practice like the one at the top, to be grateful, to ask for istiqamah, to ask for perseverance, not to fall into being neglectful. And for the one who's at the top is to be worried of descent. Yes. And for the one who's at the bottom, they have the hope of knowing that inshallah they can ascend. This is, why, the Prophet ﷺ's words are so amazing, as is the Quran. Because they give advice and counsel, not with the sense of, not with the idea that we have to think of things as concluded. Do you understand? Allah is the one who concludes. So when He's speaking, He can speak in conclusion. Our need is to understand that when He speaks in conclusion, that's not for us to think that He's asking us to think in conclusion. Are you understanding what I mean? La. When Allah is speaking in conclusion, it's for us to recognize these are absolute conclusions with Allah. But equally, He has described all of these things that if we endeavor to be like, etc., then we are in a better position with Him to know that our conclusion will be of this type. Now, amongst the last part of this hadith, what do you find? Is a good companion is like a perfume seller. Oh, we're back to perfume again. Right? A good companion is like a perfume seller. If you do not attain anything else from him, you come away with his pleasant scent. You know, if you remembered what I said as preluding comments to this hadith, is that the latter part of this hadith serves as what? As the most influential feature to help you either maintain to be from the believer who reads like the Quran is a citron, or the most influential feature that will take one who's an evildoer to head towards becoming like one who reads the Quran. The believer who reads the Quran is like a citron. Do you understand? It is a matter of sohbah. You have to have the right company. And if you do not, you are unfortunately in a very precarious place. Now, another reason why this age is of an immense challenge is because we are being sold virtual company. Now, this isn't a comment on virtual learning in the Islamic sense, like online, even just in between the break, a brother was asking about that. Like doing Islamic courses online and things. And alhamdulillah, that's a form of facilitation, yes? However, you must be coupling this with in-person sitting as well, right? So I'm not talking about everything that is in that format is like in the form of not being in person is suddenly like branded as la. There's a lot of khair you can get from these virtual spaces, right? However, they can never substitute what it means to be in person with the people of actual sohbah. Never. This is why this deen, you can see, is for another reason a very antithesis to this age, because it insists on this as a way of spiritual growth, as well as one finding reality that it is done in sohbah with good people, good company, righteous people, people of Allah. Yes. I mean, think about this, right? The way things are going on this particular topic, where, metaverse and all this other nonsense, right? the idea that now you can virtually just create someone that is of your liking. Let's put it that way, right? Are you following? They meet everything that you want. Are you listening to this? Yeah? Right? And now with AI and where it's going, they can put flesh and bones on this and everything, right? Give you an idea that it's as real can be, right? But you know what you've succumbed to, okay? What you're succumbing, you're going to go to a place of utter intolerance to anything that doesn't meet your liking. This is ironic. A culture that is so obsessed with this word of tolerance and liberation, etc., is steering itself to utter intolerance because it is facilitating the pseudo fulfillment of every expectation, fantasy, and desire that a person may have. That fallout of that is an inability to handle any form of disagreement, any form of something that is incongruous to your expectation is now met with, well, forget that. I'm just going to think of it the way that I want it. There's no humanness in that. You're going to, it's more than sterile, right? You couldn't think of a more intended manner to make people so isolated from reality is to then have these modern tools or ideas or these mechanisms of technology or whatever you want to call it, to further in their notion of that they can have anything they want on the terms that they want it. Yes? It is nafsani on a whole different level. When there's nothing more important than being around people who will check you. There's nothing more important to be around those that you know you love and you care for, that they correct you or they put you in your place. It's very important. Otherwise, what happens? You become super arrogant. Of course. So you see the thing we're talking about. So sohbah is, subhanallah, as our scholars and people of Allah have always taught and spoke of, when it comes to having company of the righteous people, is immensely significant in helping to transform ourselves to our better selves for the purpose of being close to Allah. Do you understand that? We don't have this personality worship nonsense of scholars and sheikhs. No, we don't do this. Is not the deen. What we recognize though is that Allah has set things in certain ways. And He set them in this way of a sunnah. Al-ulama warasatul anbiya. Yes, the scholars are ears of the prophets. You will know this hadith, I'm sure. So we are in need of getting access to that inheritance, is to be around that inheritance. And that inheritance is what? As the Prophet ﷺ said, they don't leave wala dinaran wala dirhama. They don't leave dinar wala dirham. They leave knowledge. And knowledge in this meaning is not just the knowledge of outward, it's knowledge of inward. Having the manners to be in those spaces with people that are known to be of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attention, specific attention, could not be better captured in an anecdote or in a narrative narrated by Ibn Abbad al-Hanbali from Ibn Najjar. Ibn Abbad, he has a biographical work on the Hanbali scholars known as Shadarat al-Dhahab, and he has quite a few entries, or he has quite a few discussions when he speaks about Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jailani radhiyallahu anhu. And in his work, he makes this narration from Ibn Najjar about at his time he was a well-known great man of Allah and understood for his piety and regarded for his wilayah, Shaykh Yusuf al-Hamadani in Baghdad. Shaykh Yusuf al-Hamadani radiallahu anhu in Baghdad, known as he was a scholar, a worshipper of Allah, and regarded by many as one of the greatest awliya of his time. It was to be that the three converged: Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, Ibn al-Isrun, and Ibn al-Saqqa. These three, in their own right, are scholars. And they decided to embark on a rihla to go and see Shaykh Yusuf al-Hamadani, each stating their intentions and motivations of why they wish to go to see him. Now, what is interesting, Ibn al-Saqqa, he said that, I want to go and see him because I want to test him. I want to test him out, see what his knowledge is like. And in fact, I want to make it clear to people that he's ignorant. Ibn al-Isrun, he said, look, as for myself, I've heard about him that he's someone whose du'as are accepted. He has a da'wah mustajaba, he's from that part. Huh? He goes, I'm going to go for that. I'm going there for that reason. I want to get his du'a, because I've heard his du'as mustajab. And Sayyidina Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani radiallahu anhu, he said, the only thing my intention is to make visit of him and at-tabarak bihi, and to get the barakah from him. وَأَنَالُ حَذْوَةً دِينِيَّةً فِي قُرْبِ مِنْ, and in getting this, I hope that there's a fortune in my deen as a result. As Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. Right? When they enter upon a Shaykh Yusuf al-Hamadani, Shaykh Yusuf, he looks at Ibn al-Saqqa and he says, Inni ara al-jadal bayna aynayk. He sees Ibn al-Saqqa and he says to him, I see argumentation resides between your eyes. And then he says, ask away. And he asks and he answers. Every question he asks, he answers him. And then he turns to Ibn al-Isrun and he says, سَيَأْتِيكَ مِنَ الْمَالِ مَا تُرِيد. He said he went there for dua. He said, I just want dua mustajab. He said, and to you will come wealth in a way as you wish it. Yeah, as you wish it, wealth will come to you as you wish it. Then he said to Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani radiallahu anhu, he said, قَدَمُكَ عَلَى عُنَقِ كُلِّ أَوْلِيَاءِ زَمَانِكَ. He said, and your foot is on the neck of every wali of your time. Yes? It was to be such what? Ibn al-Imad, he goes on to comment about Ibn al-Saqqa. He was one of the Qurra al-Quran. He is one of the Qurra al-Quran. He was agreed upon, it's memorized everything. Huh? And it was to be what? He ended up traveling to Rome at that time, was still under Byzantine authority. Parts of it anyway. So he went there and he becomes infatuated with a woman who happens to be the daughter of the king or the ruler. And he wants to marry her. And they put down the condition, you can marry her on the condition you become a Christian. And he apostates. This one who wanted to go and argue. You see? They said about him towards the latter part of his life, he's seen in Constantinople, and he's ill, aged, and he has a fly squatter, like one of these things. And he's dispelling these flies from his face, and he's asked, and what of the Quran do you remember? And he said, I've forgotten it all, except one ayah in Surah Hijr. رُبَمَا يَوَدُّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَوْ كَانُوا مُسْلِمِينَ. He goes, the only ayah I can now remember is when Allah says, and would it be that they would love, the disbelievers would love, if only they were Muslim. That's the only ayah, he goes, I can remember. Right? And as for the others, well, it was none. Ibn al-Isrun, he becomes one of the most wealthiest persons of his age. And what can we say about Sayyidina Shaykh Thaqib Jilani? The most concurred upon in thoroughly authentic, documented narrations as one of the greatest men of Allah ever to stand on this planet. This is not hyperverbial, this is a fact. This is well documented about him. His son narrates another narration about Shaykh Abdul Qadir radiallahu anhu, that this is his son, also transmitting by Ibn Imad. His father told him, he said, on one of my siyahat, one of his journeys, Shaykh Abdul Qadir radiallahu anhu said, I came to a point of extreme thirst. I was like parched to the point I was like, what was going to happen? And he's in open land, there's nothing. He said, and in that moment, clouds gathered. Yeah. And it started to, almost a dew, and by dew, filled the air. And then there was an immense light. And then from that, a voice heralded saying, Ya Abdul Qadir, we make halal for you that which we have made haram to others. And Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani radiallahu anhu, he immediately recognized who and what this was. And he said, Ikhsa ya la'in, wretched you be, O cursed one, the one with no mercy of God. This was Shaitan. This is a lower. Shaitan was trying to trick him. And he said, A'udhu billahi min shaitan ar-rajim, Ikhsa ya la'in. Then what was there as an image dispelled? Then Shaitan said, how many I led astray with that one. And then he told him, he said, it is your knowing the book of Allah that has protected you. Yeah. So we know the hadith we're doing. Not only does it mention suhbah, but it also mentions the protection that the book of Allah grants. So inshallah, may Allah make us the people of Quran, in reading, in application, in memorizing, but mainly be attached to it in a way of fahm. In this age, we want to delve to it by way of understanding, particularly, Of course, the Quran, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ says reads the Quran. It was for the Sahaba, it was impossible. They read the Quran without understanding. Do you understand? فَاِخْتِصَارَ الْقِرَاءَ, for it to be يَقْرَأ, just to say يَقْرَأ. It was, what do you mean? يَقْرَأ بِن دُونِ الْفَهْم. You read without understanding. مستحيل. Yes? Just as me saying to you, for those who don't know, pick up a book in Mandarin and start reading it. I'm assuming no one here knows Mandarin. I know someone knows Japanese though, right? Japanese. I'll be careful. right? So, this is the point. So inshallah, this is the thing, alhamdulillah, be people who want to attach themselves to the book of Allah by way of fahm as well. We must exact our reading, the things of tajweed, the things of, this is important. Of course, it's fardh knowledge. But what is really needed as well for us in our time is to begin to try and really deliberate the book of Allah in a way that we are trying to unlock the many, many meanings that are there. And that means finding obviously teachers and sitting with mufassirs and exegetes and people who can bring that ma'na across. Yes? Right? Because that is what we need. We need to build understanding about the book of Allah as layers of defense, as layers of strength. Yes? That's how you build the walls of protection. No. طيب, inshallah, that's good. I was just about to stop there as well. I mean, take some questions, inshallah. What time do we finish? 11:30, so we can go a bit of time, inshallah. Now, how do we protect ourselves from the fitna of this world, in particular AI? Is there any particular ayahs we can read? Well, I think I've kind of said the way you practically you protect yourself by not exposing yourself to that stuff without a very clear understanding of what it's for, right? Because now it's informing everything, we know that, but you have to be very, very careful. Yes, reading ayahs and things, of course, the Quran generally, Ayatul Kursi is, alas, Ayatul Kursi is go and read about the merits of Ayatul Kursi. It's the foremost of Himayah. It's one of the foremost ayahs of Himayah. And we read it daily, litany, inshallah, after every prayer, in the morning litanies, evening litanies. It's subhanallah. But it's the practical steps that really make things effective. Do you understand what I mean? Like, without a doubt, we need to read things, but please, it's like me saying, again, I come back to that analogy, all right? I want to get healthy, right? So what do? Everyone I sit with, I can talk about, like if you can do these many burpees in a minute, and you can do this and that. I can talk till I go, run out of breath from talking about it. When in actual fact, I'm talking about it, and on the other hand, I carry on my chocolate biscuits, biryani, and everything else. What is it? Forget it. Do you understand? For this to be effective, it means you have to just you have to take the practical steps. And then, you see what I'm saying? Then when you read ayahs, and now you've given the space, you could say, you've made your ground fertile for there to be something of an effect. Right? And this is what we've got to understand. Of course, Allah does whatever He wants. We know that. And of course, there's a sunnah to things as well. From our side. For verses of Quran, for ayahs, for ad'iyah, for the du'as of the Prophet ﷺ that speak of himayah and of protection and of risk and of these things. Du'as for risk? If you're doing haram, how can you even think of making du'as for risk? It's ajib. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu, Malik ibn Sinan. He was amazing for what? How Allah gave to him. And he first had to endure poverty in a way that was ajib, to the point that his wife was saying, Ya Allah, go and ask the Prophet ﷺ, go and ask him for something. He gives. Many go to him, they ask, they were in a very bad state, very difficult situation. He kept on refusing. He said, I'm not asking for nothing. Till it got to the point he had to go and ask. He goes to ask. As he enters the masjid, he hears, and this is another thing, guys, understanding when Allah is sending you a very clear sign of how to respond to your situation. We are people, subhanAllah, Allah is like giving us flood, like, and we're like, turn that off. Do you understand? We're not attentive. Allah's literally sending us every clear sign, but what do we want to do? We almost want to turn off the lights. No, I don't want to listen to that. And then we sit there going, well, make dua for me. What do you think? This is why when he walks into that masjid, he hears the Prophet ﷺ, what does he say? It happens to be yatruk adhanahu. Yani taraka udhunuhu is what hits his ears. Is the Prophet ﷺ is in mid-sentence. And he says, وَمَنْ يَسْتَغْنِي يُغْنِهِ اللَّهِ وَمَنْ يَسْتَعْفِفْ يَعِفَّهُ اللَّهِ. This is what he has to hear. He knows that's my risk right there. And in that the Prophet ﷺ said, in Arabic this is conditional causation. The one who sees themselves as enriched, Allah will enrich them. This is getting lower and lower. Right? And the one who seeks themselves to be chaste, iffa, such a beautiful word in Arabic, iffa, chaste, Allah will grant them chastity. What did he do after that? He didn't hear that and then say, oh khair, barakah, I'm still asking, alhamdulillah. You know? Yeah? He knew immediately those words were his reality in his life. And he said, I'm not asking him nothing. I'm not asking him nothing. He went back home. He had to deal with that situation, obviously. But then what happened? Sabaru. Allah then started to give him rizq and rizq and rizq. And he becomes one of the most wealthiest households of the Ansar. Right? That's not to say you don't ask, guys. You understand what I'm trying to get? What I'm saying is you've got to pay attention to where you've been put. And if Allah is giving you a message of saying you've got to know, right? That was what I'm saying, is that's what made Sahaba and people of Allah and the people of learning and people of piety, people of believers, I would just say believers, that was their attitude around things. They were more attentive to how Allah dealt with them personally versus trying to compare themselves to everyone else. And taking that as a yardstick of, well, that's how we all should be. Have you asked yourself some very simple, serious question? When you look at the life of Sahaba, I'm sure you all are aware, they went through some super tough times, materially speaking. Yeah? Abu Hurairah, Ashab al-Sufa, the bowl of milk. Are you listening to this? Yeah? You all know what I'm talking about, right? You with me? Yeah? Tell me, find me one hadith, where Sahaba turn around and start pointing fingers to the community. Abu Hurairah was falling down unconscious in pangs of hunger. Yes? Which he later goes on to speak about when he becomes a governor for Umar and his situation totally changed. And he becomes a man of wealth. Yes? And he speaks of this in Tirmidhi. And he sits there going, Bakhin, Bakhin, while he wiped his nose with his linen garment. He's like, what is going on here? And then he recollects his state when he was with the Prophet ﷺ, passing out at times in the masjid where someone put their foot on his neck and say, and they thought he'd been afflicted with some sort of malady when it was hunger that had leveled him. Where, show me where has he ever said, oh, you know, Umar, that time, you never gave me that piece of chicken. No, this is serious. I'm serious. Why? Why is this serious? Because, you know, we talk about community and stuff. There is a real sense of resilience of these people because they wanted to see Allah in their lives. And people were a means to facilitate. And if it didn't happen, they were first to surrender. It was Allah that was doing that to them. Do you understand what I mean? And then they made taslim. This is very different. They didn't start finger pointing and, oh no, let me ask, don't you think, so people are saying, no, Uthman, Abdurrahman bin Auf, these are most wealthy, what, they couldn't daily figure out, or let's just send portions of food constantly so these people in Sufa weren't going to go hungry? No, we know, right? It's not. But this says volumes about what was being nurtured. Do you see what I mean? It didn't turn into, well, we've got to blame someone for this. That's not the way of the people of Allah, and that's not the way of the people of the Prophet. He nurtured in them to see everything coming from Allah in a way that where they saw their tests, they were first call of reference was Allah Fajj, Allah yufarij. Allah, you will alleviate this. And they would write it out to the best as they could. Again, I will emphasize, this doesn't mean you don't seek help. تعاونوا على البر والتقوى ولا تعاونوا على العدو والعثمان. You know, the ayah says this. Assist each other on birr and taqwa. Look at the Prophet's advice. Help each other. Assist. You could go through hundreds of hadiths that talk about assisting your fellow brother, finding the one in need. Yes? We read it in 40 hadiths later on today. Right? That Allah is in service of that slave who's in service of his brother. Do you understand what I mean? All of these hadiths apply. All of them do. But when that isn't translating in a place and in a community that would have been the most ardent in observing such things, did it fall out into people going, oh, well, you know, he's not doing that. He's not doing that. He's letting me pay. What's this? Because you know why? Because they were first and foremost in holding each other in the best opinion. And that's why the toxicity of bad opinion didn't seep into the community. Husnul dhan. That's what we need. Didn't the Prophet ﷺ say, the one who has a need and is unable to convey it, come and convey it to me? This is what he said. And he said, and I will be the one to... This is what he said. And those of you who know a need of someone who cannot, come and tell me, what does it say about Sahaba then? This is what I'm trying to get us to understand. There was a greater sense of seeing in their trial how Allah was going to deal with them. They wanted to, you know, like that directness. They were like, it's different. Because everything around them was a testimony of it. So we need an aspect of that. You see what I mean? As an attitude. We need an aspect of this in ourselves. Again, this doesn't mean if you ask, this is not negating that, okay? Okay, don't misunderstand. But it definitely does say there's an element of where we let Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to always show us a way, you know, and make the way for the faraj. Always make him the first point of call. No. Hey, what's the 11th say? So I don't know. Yeah. Anyone? Yes. Well, one thing is, what age are you talking about? All right. So the thing is like, you know, at that sort of age, the analytical brain hasn't formed, right? They haven't got that. So at this point, you're just trying to advise, but more importantly, inshallah, demonstrate what is acceptable behavior, what is approved behavior, what is approved ways of speaking, what is approved ways of saying things, and what is disapproved ways of saying things. If you find them saying things about others and stuff, inshallah, we're the first to say, don't say that. We don't speak about other people like that. Do you see what I mean? So at this stage, it's more of a prescriptive one with a degree of explanation. As they get older and they're able to compute and at least register the significance of what that behavior has upon their soul, then you begin to inform that. then whether we like it or not, it becomes their choice. Okay? So you give them the tools, and you pray for them, and you make dua for them, and you somewhat regulate that, of course, absolutely, right? But make no mistake, then there comes a time where they're going to choose, and hopefully what you've laid for them as a way of understanding that, inshallah, they make wholesome choices. طيب. Assalamu alaikum. There is a, what's this, movement that, I can't read that. What's that, hijab? Yeah, I've got bad handwriting as well, don't worry about it. There is a movement that something far than that people were it due to culture at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Can you please and provide evidence from far Jazakallah. Oh, is this, I think I'm making out it's something to do with hijab. Brother, whoever you sent this, and like you wrote it down, the fact that you're a bloke that wrote it, man. Oh, you passed it that way. Ah. Now I got the reality. And why'd you send it that way? Oh no, I'll say that way. Like, what's it got to do with you? You keep a toppy on your head. What are you worried about a job for, bro? You need to grow your beard, man. What about a job? Astaghfirullah. Tayyib. Look, obviously the hijab is fard, right? This is just unanimous consensus. There's not even a shadow of disagreement on hijab. From the time of the matter, never, it's just, this is again one of the things of the age, yeah. So let's just put it like this. The hijab is fard. Not to do that is sin for an adult Muslim woman that is now responsible. She is ma'siyah. There's no if and but in this, okay. However, does it become something, again, that we become so focused on as a point in such a way that it begins to be seen, interpreted as a person's piety as a Muslim? That is dangerous. Because there's many things that are obligatory that if you do not do, and if you don't do, we're sinful, right? But to take that aspect or lack of commitment and use that as some kind of judgment, God forbid, on fellow sisters as you can't be a good Muslim, astaghfirullah. Do you understand? So the real concern with this is fard, okay? I mean, you said evidences and that. You can look at Surah Nur, right? And all these other ayahs. It's very clearly stipulated, yes? It's not disputed. And by interpretation of the scholars and the madahib, this is like. But my concern is what? Is that we make, this is again, where we make certain things that are important, but the kind of emphasis we start to make of them, we make them more important than what they are. Do you understand what I mean by that? I think I'm quite explicitly clear. I don't want anyone walking out of it thinking I never said hijab was not fard or something stupid. I'm just trying to say is that we have to be a lot more understanding and accommodating for this aspect, not excusing. And this is another point. I know, and alhamdulillah, there's sisters and that, they don't wear hijab. They pray 5 times a day. They're very, very careful with how they are with their tongue, right? You understand? They do all these wonderful acts of righteousness. And it would be disproportionate and illegitimate to make an emphasis to them of what? Oh, well, you're doing that, but you're not doing that. Why is this? This is... Sometimes people come to things. What do you think? And one thing they will say themselves, they acknowledge, I know this is something I need to do in time. And that's probably the most important thing, is that where there isn't a justification of it as something that you do not have to observe, that's dangerous, right? When you try to justify anything that is clearly an obligation as not being obligatory, you are in a very precarious place. Rather you say, I know, but make dua. I need Allah give me more ability and tawfiq. I'm not denying that. Yes? Khalas. Right? That's what's the most important, rather than turning it into. And also be very intelligent. Don't press people on things that you want to get a reaction from. Why? It doesn't make sense. MashaAllah, you've got to be there praying, they're doing. They know. If it comes up, then it's totally different. If they're enunciating it as an idea that is not obligatory, that's something else now. That needs to be tackled in its own way. I'm talking obviously about those that's not the question. Inshallah, Allah make it easy for them. Inshallah, there's a lot of challenges, and alhamdulillah, I think the way that we approach them, particularly here, is also how much emphasis we lay on these things. You have to be quite mindful. Tayyib. So we got to stop, is it? Muhammad's shaking his head. He's like, oh man. Now they're starting. Let me just see. Bismillah.